What's up? Welcome to Fawcett Media. We have a special guest today. Our special guest to discuss this Diddy trial and everything that's happening. We're on the verdict watch. We are within moments of finding out whether or not Sean Diddy Combs, will spend potentially the whole rest of his life in prison. With me today, we have Symone Redwine, attorney Symone Redwine, doctor attorney Symone Redwine, correct?
Oh, I just say that I troll that. I'm
You
really
troll it?
technically okay. So here's what happened. I feel like if Black China can be a doctor, then so can I.
Oh, that's a fact.
And that's because I have a Juris Doctorate, which is a doctorate. So that's why I just
Absolutely.
added doctor on there. But yes, Dr. Symone Redwine, your legal bestie on YouTube at my channel is Girl, is that legal?
Girl,
And of
is
course,
that
men are welcome. Yeah.
okay? Symone Redwine, let me tell you a little bit about her. Symone Redwine, the lead attorney at the Redwine Law Firm, is a powerful trial attorney with beauty, as you can see, brains, and a bold Southern attitude. She's recovered millions for clients, excelling in wrongful death and injury cases. Miss Redwine's background in finance and business complements her legal skills, making her a standout in real estate, entertainment, and business deals. A Dallas native, she's committed to her community. Miss Redwine is an advocate for expunging criminal records and has even taken on high-profile cases beyond the courtroom. She's a legal TV analyst, a YouTube personality, and a mentor to law students with a heart for her clients and a fearless approach. Miss Redwine is a legal force with a Southern charm that shines in both her legal practice and her life. Symone, how you doing?
Thank you. I love it. Oh gosh, you would have thought I wrote that myself.
Right. So,
Yes.
what we're here to discuss today, the jury in the Sean Diddy Combs case has reached a partial verdict on counts 2 through 5 and is deadlocked on count 1 right now, racketeering
Correct.
conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I lead off, can you explain what the partial verdict means in this context?
Sure. So what that means here is that they've come to an agreement on counts 2 through 5, but they're currently hung on the first count. And so two different things can happen there. Number one is the judge can say, all right, since you guys are in agreement on 2 through 5, we're going to have you come into the court, announce your verdict, which then forces them to stick to that verdict. Or the judge can simply say, which is more likely what he'll say is, okay, go back to the deliberation room and consider it some more. I get it that 2 through 5 are good, but spend more time trying to come to an agreement on count 1. And in doing that, they're also able to change their answers if they choose to on any of the other counts, all the way up until it has been announced in court, basically in front of everyone.
Okay. So with that information, with knowing that it's deadlocked, I did see some coverage last night that kind of maybe indicated which way the defense was feeling in the reading of the note. Did
Okay.
you catch that at all?
I did. This is a big old thing of water, y'all. It's not liquor. It's not hypnotic. What?
It's not
Go ahead.
Astroglide?
No, I do have my Astroglide somewhere over here. Y'all, over on my channel, I shake my Astroglide. Because I don't have a bullhorn, so that's what I do. Shake your Astroglide.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Somewhere over here. But yes, no. So what was your understanding of the tone after the defense received the note?
I felt like they were indicating guilty on some charges. There seemed to be a bit of remorse from what the reporting is of the people in the room. That could be telegraphing, or throwing people off on what they saw in that note, because they were discussing the counts 2 through 5 and whether or not it was guilty or not guilty. So it seemed like they said Westmoreland was pressing her temples, and everybody seemed a little gruff. Brian Steele was kind of like grimacing. I think that is what it indicates, that there's some guilt in there, unfortunately.
I can see how they may have come across with that. But interestingly, so, and just to let you guys know who are viewing, I am here in New York. And so I've been in the courtroom just about every day since the
Oh
second
yeah,
week of trial, right? So that's part of the context. That's part of why he invited me to come on and talk. And I
absolutely.
can attest, you are right. In the courtroom, that is precisely that it was just very heavy. It had been very lightweight prior to yesterday.
Hmm.
Lightweight in that, well, actually, the last 2 days, right? Prior to deliberation starting, like every day, Diddy would come into the jury and he'd wave at people. And it was kind of creepy, actually, kind of creepy. But he'd wave and he'd say, "How you doing?" He'd recognize certain bloggers, and even though he don't know if they like him or not, probably because he ain't got the internet in the feds.
Right.
But in the defense side was very jovial. They were lighthearted, and Brian still would say hello to different bloggers and those kind of things.
Right.
Yesterday was heavy. But here's the
Mm.
thing. A hung jury on Rico would be a wonderful thing for Diddy. It would be fantastic because it would be almost as good as a not guilty. I do not see the government retrying that man on Rico if it's a hung jury. I just don't see that
Right.
happening. So that would be as good as walking. So perhaps what was heavy is many have felt that whatever the verdict is for 2 through 4, that it's the same for all 4 counts. So if it's going to be guilty for 2 through 4, it's going to be guilty for all of them. If it's not guilty, guilty for all of those.
Hmm.
So that may be part of the heaviness. But my thought, when I analyze it from that perspective, though, that it would be the same answer, basically for the counts of trafficking for both Jane and Cassie, and the Mann Act, which is transportation, prostitution across
Across
state
state
lines,
lines.
right?
Right.
It'd be the same. The reason I have trouble thinking that it's all 4 going to be the same is I guess unless it's not guilty, I have difficulty seeing it being guilty, because if all 4, I have difficulty believing they're going to find him guilty of Jane's trafficking.
Right.
And I say that because of
There's
the
that
other,
possibility.
yeah, because of the questions that have been asked, the jury questions, the notes that have been presented.
Hmm.
More specifically, as an example, one of the notes that was presented, and we can get into this further later, was that they asked about a drug distribution, which is, an offense underneath the RICO statute. And they were asking, if you ask your friend for drugs and they give it to you, is that distribution?
Right.
So what that communicates to me is that there are jurors who are very focused on consent,
Hmm.
on someone's participating in something willingly, and that they don't feel comfortable convicting someone where another person has said, "Oh, I'm here on I'm here willingly,
My own
on
volition.
my own volition." Thank you.
Right. No. Yeah, I can totally see how that would be a thought process, that some of the counts might actually come back. I mean, definitely the Jane count, like you said, is
Big girl.
questionable. We spoke about that.
Yeah, we
I was
have.
like, even the Cassie, to a certain extent, for the trafficking, that's a real stretch for me, because they were in a 10-year committed relationship, committed, quote unquote.
So that's
Um,
where we got to really focus on the law, right? And the jury instructions. And
yeah,
specifically, what they say is you only need one act of coercion or
right.
force or fraud.
But it can be
She could
done
say,
twice.
no, no, not for sex trafficking.
Not
So you're
okay.
referring to Rico. Okay.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to
Predicate acts.
clarify, for trafficking, she could have said, yes, 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 I want to do free costs all the time. And if there's one instance where he beat her to get her to do one, or
Right.
drugged her to get her to do one, or any of that, or blackmailed her to get her to do one, then we got a problem. All right. Then
Hmm.
that's trafficking. Whereas separately for RICO, if the jury can agree on 2 different underlying crimes that occurred with the organization, then they are required to find him guilty of RICO. So what I'll say is this. I believe if they're hung on RICO, okay, so I guess let's take it separately. If there's an agreement that he's guilty of the trafficking and he's guilty of the Mann Act prostitution, which is prostitution across state lines, then he would be guilty of RICO as well, because those are
That's
2
true.
underlying RICO offenses. So
Mhm.
that makes me believe either he's found not guilty of those, or they do not believe all of the elements of RICO are met. Maybe they don't believe it's an enterprise. They don't
Okay.
believe it's a conspiracy. They don't think the offenses, were done for a common criminal purpose. Any of that.
So then why all the long faces? You've tried large cases, like you were involved in a case with R. Kelly.
I believe, yeah, I was. I represented on the civil side. I represented one of his victims, who
Hmm.
was later a key component in the criminal racketeering charge, where he was found guilty of similar things that Diddy is charged with.
Right.
Yes, and through that, I can say, and I'll say, even with the facts of that case, I was kind of weirded out. So it
Were
was
you
in
part
that
of a team or you were
a team,
individual? Okay.
led by Lee Merritt, Attorney Lee Merritt, the civil rights
Okay.
lawyer, actually,
All right.
one of my
Shout out to
colleagues.
Lee Merritt.
Hmm.
Heard of
Shout
him.
out to Lee. But and I'll have to say there, I was surprised that it was considered as trafficking by fraud because he gave the client herpes. Like,
Oh,
and
right.
I think it's because in throughout that case, there were different forms of S trafficking that just were not what you would generally suspect or expect. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of the difficulty of the underlying RICO offenses here, right? Because you've got the kidnapping where she gets kidnapped, they take her to work, they force her to have a lie detector for 5 days, but every day they bring her
Oh,
home.
Capricorn Clark.
Capricorn Clark. Yes,
Right.
yes, yes. So those unusual. But I'll say this, going back to specifically answer your question, you asked why the long faces if, there could be a positive verdict. It's because when you get that note, the note does not say which way they voted.
Oh,
Yeah, it
okay.
doesn't tell them. It doesn't give them the result of the vote. It just says, we've come to an agreement on this many charges, but not on the others. And, yep. And I know that for a fact. And also, the judge had already told them earlier in the day when they had the first note that said, we don't believe juror 25 can follow your honor's instructions.
The loose cannon.
The loose cannon. When that came, the judge directly responded and said, do not write back with specifics like this anymore. Right?
Right.
You're telling too much now because he has to share it with the media. He has to say it in open court, read it out. So for the specific reason of he does not want them to be like, hey, we found him guilty on this, this, and this, but not this. So that's why I know Diddy doesn't know what it was. They were just likely when they got a call that said jury's back with a verdict, and it was really within the first, day, they're thinking not guilty. So they were elated. So when they hear, oh, but there's hung up on a charge, they're probably concerned. Anytime it's that fast, remember with O.J. Simpson, with that one, the lawyers didn't have time to go all the way. Like they left to go get something to eat or
Right. They
something.
couldn't even get home.
Couldn't even get home. Had to turn right back around and come up there. So that's generally a good sign, they say, for the defense. I feel like it's a good sign for prosecution if it's like a murder trial and the defendant's like a nut bucket. But yeah.
Right. But wouldn't you think on count one, with them being at odds, maybe 6-6, guilty, not
Oh, yeah.
guilty, don't you think that's also a positive?
For sure.
Because the RICO carries a life sentence possibility.
And it's going to take all his money away. He's
And
going
it's
to be
gonna
poor
take
like me.
all
He's
his
going to be a
money.
regular person like me.
I learned that from you, Symone.
I did.
You were the first one to say, oh, they can go after everything. They can
Everything.
get mama's stuff. They can get all the kids' trust
They were
funds.
they were finna take Miss Janice's wig right off her head.
Oh, no.
All of them, the
no,
Austin
no.
Powers wig and the Lil' Kim wig. And any other
Oh,
wig she got
man.
in the closet at home.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. See, this
Yeah.
is what I'm saying, crowd, audience. I wanted to say chat. This is what I'm saying, y'all. This law, I mean, this is why it pays to be a law-abiding citizen, because all of your
Yeah.
assets, everything you work for, can be taken from you in an instant,
In an
including your life and your time.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. It's crazy that Diddy, of all people, the dude dancing in the videos,
Dancing in the videos.
is now being tried for the same crimes as your worst. You put your name on it. The Colombo
Epstein and all this. I'm
Epstein.
going to say something that is going to be controversial. So to those who follow and support my channel, I just need you to stay with me. I do got some good sense. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Which is that I do believe, though, that if he, quote, gets off, right? If he's found not guilty of this, he's not going to be running around trying to pull the stunts he used to pull.
Oh, no.
I think he's going to know everyone is staring at him. I think he's actually going to try to go overboard and be super benevolent. Any money that he still has, donate to this HBU and that. He's going to try and win the graces of America, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
So I think that's going to be very interesting to watch. But he's not the same Diddy. I mean, he's clearly some type of a substance addict.
Right.
Clearly. I mean, you
And
can
he's
look at his
clean. He's
face.
going to be clean now, right? So
Cleaner,
he's
yeah.
going to also be probably like a motivational speaker. You know, his
He
relationship with
might.
TD Jakes potentially
Lord.
could. I don't know
TD
if
got his
TD
own
wants to be
problems.
involved
Yeah,
anymore.
TD said, leave me out of this, man. I got my own lawsuits.
Hey,
Leave me
but
away.
I feel like that is the next step. The next step beyond a not guilty verdict would be for Diddy to rehab his image. And in some way, we have to think like, what does that look like? You know, like you can't be
Agreed.
out here. Like everybody in the industry has pretty much turned their back on him. So
I mean, and you have to wonder if it's for good reason. Part of that, like with all the people turning their back, right? I think once we got to the point where we knew there are no kids involved,
right.
There's no drugging people with baby oil or whatever it is, Astroglide, right?
Or
It's
Ciroc.
just some weird, freaky stuff, weird stuff.
Right.
Then the fact that, though, he still has a considerable number of people that are not around. Of course, it was the physical abuse and all of that was terrible. But it makes me think that he probably wasn't that nice of a guy beforehand.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't that good of a person. Because, when you have a jackass of a friend, right? And somehow maybe they get locked up. I'm not going to go visit you. I barely liked you. I tolerated you. I tolerated you because you were my cousin, So it's like after the fact, I think a lot of those people I think a lot of the people that may have tolerated his behavior because of his business prowess, his connections within the industry, and the fact that if you cross him, you will very easily be blackballed from opportunities. Those people ain't going to be messing with him no more. We got to get Capricorn Clark a job, y'all.
I know, man. She sounded so like she was desperate for that opportunity to get back with Diddy.
But she's really great at what she does. I got to get together with like some women's organization or something. I don't know. Maybe she could be the director of marketing and social media or something for Susan G. Komen or something.
But that's what I'm saying. Like
us women need to rally together.
With the internet being what it is, like why couldn't she like hang her shingle out and work for independent companies?
It's not like the internet wasn't like that though back when she left Diddy's.
She was trying to get a job recently, though.
No, she absolutely was. But now it could be a little different. But now she's got this case that was hanging over her head. And I bet any interview, like people might entertain a conversation with her initially. And then they're like, well, tell us about Diddy. And then think about it. Your biggest claim to fame, when you Google her, there's this amazing bio of the years that she spent at, Diddy's companies.
Bad Boy.
A Bad Boy. So you go in an interview and you've got to then explain all your work experience there. And then when they ask, well, can we get a referral? Can we get a reference letter? No.
Right. Well.
Right. And that creates a stigma on you, which is unfair for what she's been through.
Okay. Well,
unfair.
Yeah. I guess all the CEOs out there listening, you could look her up if you feel so inclined.
Capricorn Clark is her name. Yeah. If I had money and something for her to do, I'd try to hire her, even freelance. But yeah.
You just like her style, huh? Did you
she
see
was
that day
really
of testimony?
Good. I did. I was there.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So you have a personal connection. You were in the room. Y'all saw her locked us.
Shut up. No, but I believe her. I think she went through some BS. And I grew up in the entertainment industry. I grew up as a child actress.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so one of the
talking
things
about that.
And my family, my uncle was always in the music business. And my other uncle was a big jazz musician in New Orleans. One thing about the music industry, it ain't before record labels really that you could work for. I mean, they all have their subparts, but it ain't before. And they are so protective of one another. So when Diddy says he don't want you working for him, he blackballs you throughout the industry. And she doesn't have a college degree. She doesn't even have parents. She talked about being an orphan right after high school. So I can understand why she was so desperate to get back in the industry.
Was she the one that's also related to Lauren London?
That's her bestie. That
That's
was
her
her best
best
friend.
friend. Okay.
But one
All right.
thing that I thought that the prosecution did not do a good job of is explaining why she was so desperate to return to the job. Because an
Yeah.
element that they wanted her to prove up, I
Her
believe, was help
son.
forced labor. Forced labor, in addition to of course, the napping, the kidnapping, right?
Right.
And the issue with kidnapping is people had difficulty believing that if this really happened, that in 2024, just a year ago, you'd still be begging this man for a job if he kidnapped you. But I do believe she was just that desperate. But that is the prosecution's responsibility, to elicit testimony from her where she can talk about having an autistic son and having to sleep on somebody's sofa or their floor or whatever
Mm-hmm.
she had to do. I don't know, turn a trick or two to keep food on the table after being blackballed by Mr. Diddy,
Mm.
if that were the case. We
But let
didn't
me
get
push
that.
back on that. Let me
Go
push
for it.
back on that because this is something that's happened several times in this case. Is that I think you have people who testify to Diddy doing these awful things and these awful deeds, but um, they always had a way of aggrandizing him and wishing him happy birthday every year on Instagram, but still harboring these thoughts and having this history with him that is traumatic to them. So I don't know how much of that is Diddy's like mystique and allure, or how much of that is kind of can be questioned because these people still want to be in Diddy's orbit because
I
he is an impresario billionaire, you know?
Well, I liken it to, people who grew up with a nasty uncle who used to fondle you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
He did these things to you and it was terrible. But when you go to the family reunion or when he buys you your first bike or,
Paying for
helps
your
you get a
college.
car, pays for your college, help you pay, because they always doing some stuff like that if they got some money. If it's a broke one, then it's real bad. But I
Yeah.
say that to say a part of how they get other people to not suspect their behavior is to be the good guy, to be the charming person. But
Mm.
also, a component is when you still need things from that person, you have to charm them. You have to be nice to them. You can't let them know you're as traumatized as traumatized as you are. So I didn't find that to be unusual, but I did think that the prosecution did a very terrible job of storytelling elements like that needed to be told.
Right. Right. Now that's interesting. You bring that up too, because I did a couple of videos recently talking about the prosecution's handling of this case. And it seems as if a lot of attorneys that I've been running into seem to think the feds do not have a history of actually fighting cases at trial because they maintain their high conviction rate by having people plead out
Right.
before you ever get to trial.
Right.
So with this, to use Mark Garagos's term, six pack of white women,
Yes. All of them.
how do you think they've handled this case as a prosecution?
Boo. Boo.
Mm,
Listen, I was waiting any day now. I said, where's Damian Williams? Damian Williams was the original U.S. attorney that brought these charges.
right.
And I just refuse to believe that if he was still there, he's not. Trump hates him. So he's gone on to other things,
Yeah.
and been replaced. But if he were there, this would have been handled much differently. I believe the
Mm,
claims would have been built up much differently. See, Damian Williams has a background I think he's actually from the Bronx or one of the boroughs. He
okay.
has a background that is far more similar to the jurors. Damian would have never had Jane up there as a victim, as a indictment victim that you need her to prove up. He wouldn't have put her up there doing that. He would have
So
streamlined some things. And I just think that when there were those shifts that took place in the middle of the trial, right? So Damian Williams left, I guess it was like January. Yeah, whenever the election was. Or maybe
before you go too far, though,
yeah.
when you were talking about Jane, you actually seen Jane on the stand,
I saw I saw Jane.
and right, she talks like that.
Yeah,
You've
she
got a
does.
Jane impersonation. So Jane
Got the hair.
is kind of a thorn in the prosecution's behind.
Oh yeah,
Was
and
that
I think she's a plant. I think Jane was a Diddy plant.
she was? Oh wow. You think she crashed out for
No,
for
I think what Diddy's team did is they realized she's a little dingy,
Yeah.
and they said, you know what? We're going to encourage her to go over there and say what she's going to say, because that's going to help us prove and show to a jury these are trumped up charges,
Hmm.
that this is ridiculous, that these are just domestic girlfriend boyfriend situations. They said, all right, go on over there, Jane. Go ahead. We're going to pay your rent. Go on over there.
And pay for your lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But I mean, she did testify to some things about fighting back with Diddy. She did say it was mutual combat. Which,
I said it was mutual combat.
right.
She's still trying to act like she was a victim. And what the prosecution tried to focus on is they were stating that the issue is that, uh, again, they're in a 3-year relationship and he only whoops on her once, but he's whooping on
But he's
Cassie daily.
right.
Interesting. And the one time he whips on you is when you've started it. So I'm like, I have trouble believing that that's the force sufficient to call it trafficking. But what
Right.
the government stuck with is that after he slapped her and stuff, he told her, go put on some lingerie. Anton is coming, and had her do a little freak off. That was the challenge. So basically, if he hadn't had Anton come over and it was just the two of them, he would have been good to go.
Well, I heard they had some of the victims that testified met with the feds over 27 times. Was Jane
Yep.
one of them? Or was she
Not
maybe
that
a
many.
late addition?
So Jane was a late addition. Jane wasn't even added to the indictment until April. And the defendants were very upset about that because they were like, trial starts in May and you're adding her in April? That's how you know how useless her claim was.
But is that normal to meet with
Yes.
people you're going to have on the stand 27
Yes.
times?
Yeah, 27 is normal. Here's why. For this type of case, and also meetings include phone conversations.
That's
So
true.
some of it could have been like, hey, we received some discovery documents or something. We subpoenaed your phone records and we got some questions about this or that. And before trial, they don't want to sit you down 8 hours at a time. They
Mhm.
just want to ask you a few questions. A lot of it probably was on Zoom. Or maybe they're going to talk to her for 30 minutes, get some backstories, and then move on.
Yeah, we know how you
And it's different
attorneys.
people too. So it's not always the lawyers. Sometimes it might be an investigator. Towards the end, though, it was probably lawyers, things like that. But that number did sound crazy. I'll say that. To a layperson, to a juror, that number sounded cray cray.
Well, we know how you attorneys can bill for a phone call for sure. So they probably was getting those out there.
That's true. Absolutely.
They were get them numbers on the board.
Now I wonder who paid for her lawyer, because it wasn't Diddy. And she did have a lawyer. Mia. That was Mia.
For Mia, that's right. Mia. Yeah, that's a good question. What happened to Mia? Like, we've been talking about Jane so much, and then Cassie, it just skipped right over Mia.
I'll say this before I have to go. Okay, now I have a video on my page. If you go to my my channel, which again is called Girl Is That Legal? I'm your legal bestie.
Symone Redwine.
Thank you. Where I talked about the RICO elements that I thought were the strongest. Well, now that we've got and received the charging instructions, the jury instructions, I have to say the ones that I thought the strongest were the bribery. I also thought, the bribery, the tampering with witnesses, and the hookers across state lines.
Right.
Very clear on this. Male hookers especially.
That's workers.
Because I can understand how a juror could say, I don't know, his girlfriend wasn't a hooker. He gave her money because that was his girlfriend. You see what I'm saying? I could see that. But I learned that with the tampering with witnesses, I thought that was the hotel workers, because I was like, bribery from the hotel, proven. And then we've got the hotel workers were tampered with. No, the tampering with witnesses / obstruction was actually Mia, the girl who was allegedly SA'd by Diddy, and Jane. And Jane.
The two people that ended up on the stand.
Yeah. So I don't think those are strong claims at all. So in the tampering was basically Diddy, well, with Mia.
That's in the RICO, though, the witness
Under the
tampering.
RICO. Under the RICO. So I guess what I'm saying is I see now how the RICO is weaker, but even still, remember, RICO could be proven by even 2 of the same things. So if they found that there were 2 different male hookers that were paid to cross state lines, they'd have them. If they found that it was bribery, I don't know how you get out of that bribery. You know, it does not have to be an official that is bribed. Under California law, it only needed to be a witness or a potential witness, had to simply be offered something. They didn't even have to take it. Offered.
Yeah, it's just it's assault and battery, like. Just the attempt.
Just the attempt. So yeah, so for those reasons, I say number one, the RICO underlying offenses, there's really probably only 2 or 3 strong ones. We know that the jurors actually aren't even feeling comfortable about the distribution charge under the RICO. And that was one
They
where
asked
if
a
you said,
specific question. Yes.
yep, they said, they asked, if a friend asks you for substances and you give it to them, is that distribution?
No,
It is.
absolutely not.
It was under the law. So the judge then directed them to specific lines in the jury instructions. And those lines, if you read them, say yes. Here's the problem with that. And this will kind of be my final note.
Okay. Then we're going to get a prediction.
Oh, absolutely. My final note is, I think the problem with that, it was like the way in which the question was posed was that there is a juror who thinks this sounds like some foolishness. This sounds dumb. This sounds like it could be me or you or anyone I know. And if you're telling me that just giving my friend something they've asked for is a racketeer crime, I don't know that I want to vote for that. That's what I heard in my legal mind as an attorney under that. And now it then made sense that they're hung on that charge.
Yeah, that does it. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of this is common sense when it really comes down to it. You know, like, we are the people of the jury. Like, what would we think in that situation? Would we want to be convicting somebody for something that we might do ourselves?
Exactly. When you see yourself in that person, you don't want to send them to jail. The problem is here, a lot of the witnesses on the stand were not relatable. The jurors can't see themselves and some of their choices and decisions, and therefore, jurors are more likely to interpret them as not telling the truth or simply not being sympathetic.
Well, I want to clear that up. We see things in ourselves, but we ain't throwing no freak offs over here.
No,
you know
no.
That just seems like a stretch. That should be.
No, I got something else to do.
But maybe in the possession of the distribution.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The possession in that way. Like, I mean, shoot, I take Adderall. You know, I got my prescription from my doctor. If a friend asks me for something, I hand it to him. I'm not a racketeer.
Right.
Don't put me in this. You know?
Yeah, I'm not going to admit to it.
Yeah, I got a home girl.
I need to focus.
And if I got a home girl, she's a loosey goosey. And if I fix her up with, one of my rich millionaire friends and they go do it to each other and he pays her.
He flies her out.
I now flies her out. Did I now conspire for prostitution across state lines? Because she was going to do it regardless. So that's just what I'm saying. I'm saying.
She's going to do it regardless before the $400 dinner?
Oh, she needed the $300 because she going to have to pay her phone bill.
Oh, so she's going to take the money and the dinner. Okay, all right. I got you.
Oh, yeah.
I got you, yeah.
It's just one of my hood examples, just illustrating.
You got to pay your $10,000 mortgage or rent for your house.
Child.
She was renting the house, right? She wasn't even owning it.
Right. Just a real genius. Just a real genius. So let me give you, I'm going to give my prediction and then I want to hear
Let's go with our predictions for
No, you go first. You're the host.
Okay. All right. If I had to make a prediction right now, which we're probably going to find out in the next few hours or so, I'd say that on counts 2 through 5, let me see if I got a list here. Where am I? It was on my phone here. Counts 2 through 5. All right. Boom. Sex trafficking, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Count 2. I would say not guilty. Transportation to engage in prostitution. Count 3. That's for the 2 girls, right? Two ladies.
Yeah.
Yep. I say not guilty on those. Count 4. Trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Okay. That would also be not guilty. Transportation to engage in. I'm pretty much giving them clean run. Like, I think he's sweeping this.
All right. What about the RICO?
The RICO, the one that they're hung up on, it's split right now. I'm going to go with a Symone Redwine classic. They're going to hang on the RICO.
I 100%, I agree with you both ways. All the way. I think same thing. I think the way that they so quickly agreed on 2 through 4, and those technically were tricky. That so quickly they agreed on 2 through 4. I do believe that whatever the verdict is, it's the same for all of them. So if it's so I do think because of how fast I think it's the same for all of them. And I think there's no way they're going to find him guilty of trafficking Jane after that closing argument, right? So
Right.
that's what makes me say no there.
Give it up for Agnifilo too.
Yeah,
That closing argument was,
even though
from
he
what I'm
cheated,
hearing, it was amazing.
but he cheated.
He
So
cheated.
no all
Yes,
the way down.
he got reprimanded too,
Yeah.
though.
And I'm also going to say no all the way down as well, because if it was yes to both of those, then it would have been yes to Rico, unless they didn't agree that Rico was a conspiracy or an enterprise. Under
Okay.
the racketeering. So that's what
All
I got.
right.
So yeah, it
All
looks like he
right.
might
Thank
be
you. My
good
legal
to go.
bestie here.
Yes.
Attorney Symone Redwine. Give it up for her one time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for
I
taking
definitely want to
time out
talk
of
to you
your
after the
schedule.
verdict. We're going to have to get back together.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Let's do
Okay.
it. Maybe
All
we
right,
can go
sounds good.
live or something. Do something.
Something. All right. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
All right. Later. Wasn't that great, y'all? I want to once again thank Attorney Symone Redwine for joining us here on Fawcett Media. Make sure you follow her channel at Attorney Symone Girl Is That Legal. She's been covering the Diddy case. She's been there on the scene, making a real difference. And like, I like talking to people like this because they have a perspective that isn't necessarily driven by their own personal beliefs or situation. She can see both sides of the thing because she's been an attorney. She's obviously well informed. Go check her out. Go subscribe to her channel. Hit her up. She's got good information over there. Anyway, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification for all uploads. If you want to watch more, please watch one of these videos down below. This is Fawcett Media.